The shadows of the DNA secret hadn't vanished. Jame had simply chosen to bury them deep beneath the golden floor of a new reality. The winter mist had finally broken, replaced by a sun so brilliant it felt like a celestial apology for the months of mud and misery. Today, the northern highlands didn't smell of rotting wood and damp earth. They smelled of sun-dried grass, blooming wild lilies, and the intoxicating scent of a fresh beginning. James stood in the center of a clearing near a crystal-clear stream, his broad shoulders catching the direct fire of the morning rays. He was no longer the man in the torn, mud-caked tank top. He wore a crisp, white linen shirt, the fabric light and breathable, reflecting his newfound clarity. But the strength remained. Even in his clean attire, the way the fabric strained against his powerful chest and bicep spoke of a man who had mastered the earth with his own hands. Jame reached down and hoisted a massive, polished beam of cedar wood onto his shoulder, his muscles rippling under the white fabric as he strode toward the center of the clearing with the grace of a king reclaimed. He wasn't building a fortress to keep the world out anymore. He was building a sanctuary for the two souls who had saved him from himself. Today's labor was an offering to Nai, the innocent spark who reminded him every day that the future was more important than the bloodline. James set the cedar beam down with a controlled, heavy thud, the scent of fresh wood chips filling the air. He was constructing a grand wooden swing, a simple structure of immense strength meant to hang from the ancient banyan tree that stood as a silent sentinel over their valley. Every strike of his mallet, every turn of his hand drill, was a rhythmic celebration of peace. The physical exertion was still there. The sweat still beaded on his forehead and glinted on his neck. Nahung it was a clean sweat, a baptism under the sun. Jame gripped a heavy iron sanding block and began to smooth the rough edges of a wooden seat, his arm moving in a powerful, relentless blur until the grain of the wood shone like gold leaf. Nearby, Diep was a vision of noble serenity that Jame often found himself stopping to admire. She moved through a patch of tall, emerald grass, her movements as fluid as the stream beside them. She was no longer the trembling girl hiding from a father's wrath. She was the queen of this small, sun-drenched haven. Her pale face, finally free of the smudges of soot, glowed with a quiet, internal light. She was weaving a thick garland of white lilies and purple wildflowers, her slender fingers working with a precision that mirrored James' own craftsmanship. The contrast was breathtaking. The man of iron and wood, and the woman of flowers and spirit, both united by the shared labor of building a home. Jame watched as she finished a crown for Nai, the love in his gaze far more valuable than any inheritance he had left behind in the city. Diep looked up, catching James' eyes, and she performed a simple, heart-stopping gesture. She tossed a single white lily toward him, which Jame caught mid-air with a lightning-fast reflex, a rare, boyish smile breaking across his face. Then came the heartbeat of their joy. Ni erupted from the edge of the woods, a whirlwind of pure energy and laughter that seemed to make the very sunlight tremble. She was wearing a simple cotton dress, as white and clean as James' shirt, her hair flying wildly behind her as she ran. To her, this wasn't a rural retreat or a shack in the mud. This was the kingdom of Uncle Jame and Auntie Diep, a place where the air was sweet and the hugs were infinite. She didn't know about the burned papers or the man in the black car. She only knew that the man she loved as a father was building her something magical. Jame dropped his tools the moment he heard her scream of delight. He didn't care about the sandalwood or the unfinished swing. He only cared about the small, laughing human charging toward him like a force of nature. Jame lunged forward, his massive arms scooping Nai up before she could even reach his knees. And he spun her around in a dizzying circle, her colorful flower crown flying off as they both collapsed into the soft, sun-warmed grass. They lay there for a moment, the three of them, a tableau of noble happiness that defied every law of the high-finance world Jame had escaped. The grass was cool against their skin, the sky above a perfect, unblemished blue. Jame looked at his hands, hands that had plowed through mud, tray, and fought off the shadows, and he realized they were finally clean. Not because of the soap, but because of the purpose. The labor of a father, even one without a biological claim, was the highest form of industry. He looked at Diep, then at Nye, and felt a fierce, predatory protection swell in his chest. He would keep this haven clean. He would keep the sun shining here, even if he had to hold back the clouds with his bare hands. The billionaire's ghost was dead. Long live the man who built swings and caught lilies. James stood up, lifting Nye onto his broad shoulders, and marched toward the stream, his powerful legs wading into the crystal-clear water as he splashed Nye with a playful spray, their laughter echoing through the silent, golden valley. The golden hour descended upon the valley like a benediction, turning the rippling stream into a vein of liquid fire. James stood back, his white linen shirt now clinging to the powerful contours of his chest, damp with the clean sweat of a man who had finally built something that couldn't be bought with a checkbook. The cedar swing was finished, a noble structure of polished wood hanging from the ancient banyan tree like a throne for a small queen. The air was thick with the scent of wild lilies and the sweet perfume of ripening rice, a stark contrast to the metallic stench of the city factories he had left behind. James' hands, though clean of mud, bore the fresh, red marks of labor, the physical evidence of his devotion. He had traded his billionaire's legacy for the simple, agonizing joy of being a provider in a world that didn't care about his last name. Jame reached up and gripped the heavy hemp ropes, testing the strength of the swing with a violent, rhythmic tug that made the ancient banyan branch groan in approval. Diep approached him, her presence a silent melody in the dying light. She looked like a figure from a forgotten legend, her pale skin glowing with a health the mud shack days had almost stolen from her. She held the crown of wildflowers she had woven, the whites and purples stark against the emerald green of the grass. The peace in her eyes was breathtaking, a calm so profound it made James' heart ache with the weight of the secret he still carried in his soul. He looked at her and saw not a rural girl, but a woman of immense strength who had survived the shadows of Mr. Han. He realized that this haven wasn't just a place. It was a shield he had built with every drop of his sweat. Jame took the flower crown from Diep's slender fingers and carefully placed it upon her head, his rough thumb lingering for a moment against her temple with a reverent touch. Nye's laughter suddenly pierced the tranquility, a bright sound that echoed off the hills. She ran toward them with her arms full of marigolds, her small feet thumping against the sun-warmed earth. To her, Uncle Jame was a giant who could bend trees, and Auntie Diep was a queen who smelled of lilies. She didn't see the tension in Jame's shoulders when a distant engine sounded, or the way his eyes searched the horizon for a black car that never came. She only saw the swing. Jame watched her approach, his protective instinct surging like a tide, a fierce need to keep this innocence untainted by the filth of his family's bloodline. Jame lunged forward, catching Nye mid-stride and hoisting her high into the air before placing her firmly onto the wooden seat of the new swing. As he pushed her, the rhythmic swish of the swing became the only heartbeat that mattered. Jame watched Nye soar toward the golden sky, a symbol of the freedom he had bought with his own sacrifice. He looked at Diep and felt a soul-wrenching clarity. If the burned DNA report was the truth, then the sun was a lie. If the blood in his veins was a curse, then this peace was his only redemption. He would never tell them. He would carry the weight of the brother and the lover until his bones turned to dust. For as long as they were happy, his soul was at rest. James stepped behind Diep, wrapping his massive arms around her waist, his chin resting in the crook of her neck as they both watched Nye swing higher into the light. Their evening meal was a sacred ritual by the water's edge. They sat on a clean straw mat, the spread of simple rice and grilled fish more extravagant than any five-star banquet. Jame watched Diep peel fruit for Nye with a noble grace that made the billionaire's world seem like a hollow dream. He was still the secret provider, the man who managed a timber empire through whispered phone calls. But here, he was just a man who knew how to start a fire. He would spend every ounce of his strength to ensure the mud never touched their feet again. Jame picked up a heavy water gourd and poured a cool stream over Diep's hands, washing away the day's labor before they broke bread together. As stars pierced the velvet blue sky, a shadow crossed Jame's mind. Nye had brushed against a tiny, unburned corner of the DNA envelope earlier, a fragment with the word positive barely visible. He had snatched it away, burying it deep in the embers, but the image remained scorched in his memory. The ghost of the past was always watching, waiting for a crack in the sanctuary. Jame looked at the two women in his life, his determination hardening into a wall of iron. He would plow, he would build, and he would lie until his last breath to keep this golden piece alive. Jame stood up and stacked dry logs into a towering pyre, striking a match and watching the flames roar upward to challenge the encroaching darkness.
Sau chôn vùi bí mật DNA, Jame bắt đầu xây dựng một cuộc sống mới dưới ánh nắng hy vọng nơi vùng cao nguyên. Anh dùng chiếc xích đua gỗ như biểu tượng cho tương lai của Nhi, coi tình thương là điều quan trọng hơn huyết thống. Bên cạnh anh, Diệp dần trở nên mạnh mẽ và bình yên, cùng chung tay tạo dựng mái ấm giản dị nhưng tràn đầy yêu thương. Những khoảnh khắc vui đùa bên dòng suối và bữa cơm mộc mạc mang lại cho họ cảm giác hạnh phúc chân thật, như thể quá khứ đã lùi xa. Tuy nhiên, trong lòng Jame, bí mật vẫn âm ỉ tồn tại một khi kết quả chưa chảy hết, khiến anh lo sợ sự thật có thể bị lộ.